As she's reading, as Sue was reading everything, I was like, oh my God, I sound like kind of important, but I'm really not. So I guess when you put it down on paper, it sounds like, I don't know, doing a lot of stuff here. Okay, let's see. Slideshow from beginning. So good evening. I'm so happy to have everybody here. Can I kind of know, like, the audience, your name? I can see your names up here. Like, what districts are you from, or how old your children are? That kind of gives me a good idea. Are they all high school students?
Hi, this is Kathleen Anderson. I'm actually a QIDP with the ARC of the Quad Cities area.
Oh, great. All right. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Danielle, and is it Raina?
Yes, Raina.
Okay. So.
Yes,
go ahead.
My son is 17. He's still in high school.
Okay. All right. Thank you. What district does your son go to? Iowa, or you could just tell me Iowa, Illinois.
Moline. He's in Moline High School.
Oh, Moline. Okay. All right. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started then. We're going to talk about transition planning and just how to prepare and just be that active partner in the process. So as Sue kind of mentioned, I just wanted to highlight some things. Who am I? I'm a mother of 4 children, all boys. That's a whole different presentation. I don't know. I'm trying to get my girlfriend to join the club with the 4 boys. She's got 2, but she said she's pretty much done. And 3 cats. My son, Weston, is there in the picture. He's sitting down in the middle. He has, as Sue said, he has Angelman syndrome. So I have worked on both sides of the table as a parent and then as a professional. And as I will just kind of skip down here, an advocate for student transition. It is such a passion of mine to make sure our kids have a plan when they leave high school, and whatever life plan, working with the families and the students, where that would lead families, just to provide the best life for our kids, because they deserve to have a life and not just sitting at home once school is done and then we don't know where we're going. I am a wife, and I just added that because I got married in June and getting ready for my first anniversary, and then a social worker and special education coordinator. And I think when I wrote that, Sue, I said 22. I think it's 23. I kind of lose count, but anyway, and again, just such an advocate. One of my goals when I started at Bassett was to have a program and for our students that aren't low enough to go to our center program, which some of our kids attend there, some low incident population, but kind of those kids that are done with their academics, but then they're just not quite ready to leave. So I am so super excited that we were able to get that up and running this year. And we have 6 students in our program, and it is fabulous. They're all out in the community and they're just developing their independent skills. So I'm super excited. That's one of my proud accomplishments, but it takes a team. It's just not me. All right. And then I like quotes whenever I present. I always have some kind of quote in my presentation. And I found this and I thought it was interesting because I'm working with a family right now. And I'll tell you about that in just a second. It takes courage to grow up and become who you really are. And I was reflecting on that. It takes courage to grow up for our kids because they've been Maybe they've been in a self-contained classroom, maybe they've had a para all their lives, maybe they've just really been close to their family. And then just to get them to open up, advocate for themselves, talk about what they really want, who they really are, and maybe it's something they want to do or be that nobody's really kind of investigated that for that student or shown options for that student. And then I was thinking, this is the family I'm working with too. Their child is going to be not graduating, but finishing school academics, and they want her to continue. And they are really having a hard time. So just the courage, not just for our students, but also for us as parents, because as you all know, there's just a lot of concern, and we're protective of our kids anyway, and especially with our kids that have additional challenges. Okay. So when we are talking about the IEP and the evaluations, and I just want to make sure, I'm going to talk, unless we had anybody with younger kids, I will talk to that too, but I'm going to talk as if all the kids are in high school. So when we're talking IEPs and evaluations, it is so important that staff, and we struggle with this, like in some of my districts, that they really clearly explain the student and clearly explain the disability, their strengths, their weaknesses, what type of class they might be in. And when families go to start applying for benefits, or maybe they've applied for Social Security, sometimes they get denied. And when you look at that report, because that's what Social Security looks like they find that it's like, is this really our student, when we have rave reports and they're social and they have lots of friends? Well, that could be true. And this gets kind of sticky because we want to be really positive with our kids. But yes, they have lots of friends, but they're in a self-contained classroom. There's 6 kids there. Those are the kids that are their friends. And then what type of independence is a student having? I had a student that they were going to refer to the Achieve program, and as I was sitting in the meeting, I had realized that the student had a one-on-one para, and although our kids, some of our kids, depending on their needs, that may be a factor. He just wouldn't be appropriate for Achieve from what we're looking at. So even if your student has a one-on-one para in high school, I strongly, strongly recommend that we start fading that para back if we can, because what I have found and what I've read through research, that the dependence on students to that adult just becomes what's the word I'm looking for? Just becomes really strong, and it's really hard to break that. And other examples, I worked with a student, and the student couldn't do anything without first looking to their para. He couldn't even write his name on his paper without looking to his para. Para wasn't doing anything, but it was just that comfort. So I strongly recommend, and if you have questions about that or how we can do that, definitely talk to me about that, because I feel that's my high horse. I'll get on that. And I'm just really strong about, our kids aren't going to have somebody walking around with them all day long, especially once they get out of school. And when you're applying for some benefits, or say like a group home, or how much independence does the student have? They really look at that. And it is a little bit easier to find programs if the student is a little bit more independent. Any questions about that? The other thing I want to talk about is families should be informed about benefits. And these are things, as I'm talking, things that you can make sure, take back to your team at your school. There are so many times that I hear parents like, I didn't know anything about this. I have a parent that I'm working with right now, and she goes, I have two of my kids are in, one's in high school, she's a senior, the other student is a post-senior. And she goes, I didn't know any of these things. And so that really kind of made me sad. And it's really truly up to our case managers, social workers. It depends on your school, your special ed coordinator, BOS ed coordinator, wherever you're at in your schools, to really be familiar with what is available out in the community and to become partners with the outside community resources to give those options to our families. Okay. The other thing, once we're talking about transition plans, so they technically start at for Illinois 14 and a half. When a student turns 14 and a half during their IEP time, that's when we have to officially do the paperwork for our transition plans. In my opinion, we need to start when they're in kindergarten. We need to continue to work on strengths and just to continue to develop and build on all of that as they go through their school. The federal department says it's 16 for transition plans, but Illinois, each state can make up their own age limit. So please make sure that you're asking questions when you're in these IEP meetings, always asking, and I'll reiterate this, when you're sitting there with doing an IEP, doing an evaluation, they're talking about present levels, make sure that they are really making sure that they are really identifying your student. And I also tell schools that I work with when I do presentations that it should be the stranger test. I should be able to walk into your classroom, pick up that IEP, read it, and get a perfect picture of that student and what that student needs. Okay, so transition assessments. So school staff, they must complete annually transition assessments, and it has got to be within that 1 year of that IEP. And so they have to look at the employment, training, education, and independent living. So the independent living, the employment, a lot of times, especially with our younger kids, like 14 and a half, 15, they may have reading goals, they may have math goals. They can be embedded in those transition assessments and those transition goals. So if it's a reading goal, a math goal, depending on what type of employment the student is interested in getting into, they're going to need to read. They may need to have some math skills. The other thing with the training and education, I think some of our teachers kind of forget about what that education truly means. It means college and community college. It's post high school. So sometimes I'm reading through and I see goals for education when it's a student that is not going on to college. It's just not a realistic plan. And then that independent living. Where's that student going to live? How are they going to afford their bills? What kind of budget will they may have? Where is their money going to come from? So those are the three areas that they need to make sure that they do those transition assessments for. And the purpose for that is that it helps to identify their strengths, interests, their skills, and their or the knowledge needed to reach their goals for life after high school. So again, we're always forward thinking. We're always thinking, what is the life going to be like after high school? Again, we use these assessments to develop the plan in the IEP. So again, keeping this in mind when you're sitting at the IEP, when they're doing those transition assessments, they should be in that present level. and they should be addressing their strengths and their needs, and that's going to drive their goals. So it all ties in together. And I just found the Council of Exceptional Children because I like them and they are well known. Their definition is that ongoing process, and I just want to emphasize it's an ongoing process of collecting data on the individuals. And as I just said, their needs, preferences, interests, because things at a 15-year-old may change when they're 17. So it is an ongoing process, and we should continually be working towards those three areas: employment, independent living, education, and/or training. So within those assessments, there are two types. There's the formal and the informal assessments. The formal assessments, those are the more norm referenced or the criterion referenced assessments. They're standardized. Sorry, I've got a sinus thing going on here, so I'm a little stuffy. And they just compare students' results to those of similar students. And some examples of those, they're listed there. I'm not going to read them through. So just take a minute and look at those. And then our informal assessments. So that's more of observing the student in various academic and work experiences, talking to the student. The student can have some really great ideas. So let's not forget to talk to our students about what they like and dislike. And then having teachers set up those experiences to allow the student to try something new. So things to think about again when you're talking about their transition plan at an IEP meeting. Ask these questions. If this hasn't been done, have you set up an experience to see how that student would work, how fast they can complete the task? Did they like to do the task? So just, keeping these things in mind. And some examples for those informal assessments: interviews with the student, with the family, interviewing the teacher, any kind of questionnaires, direct observation, curriculum-based assessment, and environmental analysis. So more like an observation. These are, if you Googled transition assessments, you're going to come up with a whole long list of different kinds of checklists. At the program that I supervise, we do a lot of the informal, and I do a lot of informal assessments. I do like checklists, I do interviews, I do questionnaires and observations. So I just really want to get a good full picture of what our students are doing and continue to build on their strengths. The other thing you want to think about too is really kind of watch and keep in the back of your mind the type of assessments your teachers are doing. A lot of times I'll find that they're just doing interviews. Okay, that's fine. But then if they're doing interviews the past 4 or 5 years, can we try something different? Because there's so many different assessments out there. I think sometimes it gets just easy, just the day of the IEP. Hey, what do you want to do after graduation? And then just go from there. So make sure this is such an important piece, because again, it drives the IEP, it drives the plan for our students post high school. So ask those questions. Some non-examples of transition assessment, and you can see those there. I won't read through them. I have worked with a state on transition plans, and I had thought, and this is my own mistake that I did, I had thought during the evaluation, some of the assessments that I did, I could use that for a transition assessment. And the ISB, Illinois State Board of Education, consultant said that is not a transition assessment. That is an assessment, but it's not a formal transition assessment. So that's something else that you just gotta kind of keep in the back of your mind. Psychologist assessments, probably not, because that's not focused on that transition. Okay, any questions up to this point? You guys are so quiet. I feel weird.
I think it's important too to note that they have to kind of take some of their heart to a certain degree out of writing those things. They may absolutely adore that student. That might be the sweetest student ever. You want to say that they can do all of this stuff that maybe they can't. They're a great worker, but when they're going to say a workshop, are they working at all independently? Or are they only working because you're right there?
Yeah.
Kind of feeding them what they need to do. And those are really important things for the agency to know too.
Yes, that's 100%. And for the school, and we kind of got in a little bit of a pickle when, we had a student that we worked with, kindergarten, first, second, she's great. It was just, she's so cute. We just love her and she's doing these great things as long as she had her para there. But then she's, junior high, and then she's moving into high school. And although she's, obviously she's still a great kid, but it almost kind of came back to haunt us a little bit, because now we're having conversations of, really where she's at. And it was unfortunate because she's doing a lot better now, but she was very dependent on her one-to-one para. And it was scary for mom. She's been in a small school and she knows everybody, and it was safe. And it was scary for mom to move to the next step and next level for her. But she's doing great. And again, it's just having those relationships with our parents. Okay, and thank you, Sue, for bringing that up. Anytime you want to jump in, I'm totally fine with that. Okay, the next section, and this kind of goes through like our IEP process that districts are to have when we talk about our transition plans. So the next section we have is that post-secondary outcomes. So that it indicates and projects the desired appropriate measurable post-secondary outcomes. So that's outcomes after they left high school. And again, that's identified by the student, parent, and IEP team. And I kind of laugh about that statement because IEP team includes student and parents. This should be all just one. And then again, I'm going to hit it home. Those goals, they are all based on those assessments. And again, related to those areas. So what that will look like and what that says on the IEP is upon graduation, Weston will work in a sheltered workshop. Upon graduation, Weston will go to a four-year college and study to be a welder. So it could change, but it has to use those specific words. Upon graduation, student will. We have to have that will in there. So some of it's like, that's never going to happen, or that, but it is something that we have to put in. And again, you're putting in something that's realistic too. If a student, sometimes staff have interviewed students and said, no, I want to go to college, and they just write that down. And it's like, they don't come to school half the time. They're not doing their homework. They're not finishing their classwork. Is that realistic for that student? Or we hear a lot, I want to be a professional football player. Is that realistic? The student's in an alternative program. He's never played football before. He can't get along with his peers. Is that realistic? So not that you want to like snuff out any kind of dreams, but that is where staff members need to pry a little bit more and ask, what is it about football that you like? And actually the kids said, well, they make a lot of money and they have a lot of girlfriends. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll talk about this a little bit more. So just really thinking about, is that realistic? Okay. And then the next section of the IEP is just identifying the courses of study that's going to help our students get to their post-secondary outcomes. What are we going to provide for our students that's going to help them reach those transition goals? And I think this is really important as well. And again, you can see as described by the assessments, everything is tied back to those assessments. Once we have great assessments and everything else kind of flows because we know the needs of the students and their strengths, and we can build on those strengths and then address those needs. So I had an example of a student that I'm again working with ISB, and the student wanted to do something like in biology, some science, and he noticed, the consultant noticed that he didn't have any science classes, the more that he went up. Well, the family, because remember, we're all part of a team, really valued music. And so because it was a smaller school and we didn't have a lot of science classes to choose from, and you either had to choose music or a science class, they wanted him to be a part of the band and the choir. So that was fine, because we just have to have input from the whole team. Okay. Is everybody doing okay? I got to get a drink, just a minute. Okay. So the next section of the IEP is our transition services. So when we complete this page, we include everything that's appropriate. If it's not, then we just say that it's not appropriate or NA. So some of these outside agencies, and we'll come back to this in just a minute. So the first thing that we look at is instruction. What kind of instruction are we going to give our students if, say, for a college entrance exam? Do they need skills training? Do they need support in math and reading? What kind of accommodations are we going to give them? So anything that is also identified in the present levels in the area of need and what we can do to support the student in that instruction area, that is what we're going to list there. The related services, I think this is a really important one because there's some things that I don't think people always think about. So transportation, for one, in the Achieve program, all of our students are out working, volunteering at a job site. And that's great. And there's some opportunities for a couple of our kids to stay on and possibly get hired on. Again, that's super. But if they don't have transportation skills, how are they going to get to their job? And we can't always rely on parents to transport them. So what are the different things that we can do to help in that transportation area? Social services, medical services. If I'm working with a student who's got maybe some mental health issues, does that student know when to call the doctor? Do they know how to refill their medication? To reach out for counseling services? And then again, just medical needs in and of itself. Any technology, I mean, our world is moving fast and furious, with technology. How can we help our students with some technology devices and supports to help them manage their life? Community experiences. What kind of community experiences are our high schools going to give our students? What does that look like? And you can see the examples there. I think a lot of this can be done, and I know a lot of schools do this. So that's really exciting. And then the next sections, just the development of employment and other post-school adult living objectives. So what does that look like? This is, again, post-school, once they get out. What are those different areas that they need to be able to have once they're out of high school? And then the acquisition of daily living skills. Again, this is our independence. Where are those the examples and the skills that we need to help our students. Again, self-care, and maybe that's something that's all we're looking at is self-care, is home repair, money, independent living, any job and career interest, budgeting, shopping, cooking. So it's those different kinds of things that would go into that specific area. And then that final one is the linkages to after graduation. And this is so important because from my experience with many of the families that I work with, a lot of times they don't know. I don't know if any of you have had a step worker, DRS come through BASED. Sometimes there's a lot of people that don't even know that BASED has that service, or families, or how they can help with jobs and schooling, and as they can move through into adult living, how they can transfer them into more adult services. So any of these areas, and I always think like, call Sue, she knows all this too. The other thing with this too, on each one of these sections and areas that I talked about, there's a section that talks about the provider agency and position, who's going to help the student, whatever we put in that box, who is that person that's going to help that student achieve the area and achieve that goal. And then we need to put in a date of when this is going to be addressed and then when it is completed. So it really keeps us all on our toes, so we can keep going back. Remember, I said it's an ongoing process. We should really keep going back and kind of looking and checking with ourselves and seeing, are we continuing to move forward with transitions for our students? Okay, and then the next section is that home-based services. So in order to be considered for home-based services, the student has to have an intellectual developmental disability. They may be eligible for home-based services and other services funded by the Illinois Department of Human Services or the Division of Developmental Disability after 18, and then they're no longer in high school. So the student and family, so the first part of this is just the plans for determining a student's eligibility. So the student or the family, they have to meet with the local independent service coordinator, and they have to provide to discuss the prioritization of urgency of needs. That's your PUN system. And then to register for potential IDHS or DDD funding eligibility. So the first step is having that meeting with that individual. And then for enrolling the student in the program, as you can see here, the student has to register for potential IDHS or DDD funding and via the PUN system. And then the student records have to be kept up at least annually. And then moving on to the third section, plans for developing a plan for the student's most effective use of home-based services after reaching 18 and when no longer receiving special education services. As you can see there, that the student family have become familiar with the local adult intellectual developmental disability service providers. The ISC inquired whether the student family wants to move from planning for services to seeking services at age 18. And then ISC has discussed and documented all desired home-based services with the student and family. And so some of the things that are included, as it says, but not limited to, is those day services, in-home supports, residential living arrangements, and support service teams. So with our, and I know Sue, you you are well aware of this. So when we're talking about the priority of urgency of needs, what we know is that there is not enough funding. There is a wait list for services currently, and I got this information 2021, there was 23,000 on the list, and it looked like a wait for 5 to 7 years. But we really encourage people to register now. Many times when I have families that have called, they said, no, you can just wait till you're 18 and register. I hear conflicting messages. My take on that as a mom too is I would register now and continue calling and trying to get your child on the PUNS list. I don't know, Sue, you might have a different thought on that. And sometimes they won't, I don't know if they'll take them or not, but I'd go ahead, you were gonna say.
We do have another workshop coming up where the people from Prairie Land Service Coordination
Perfect.
will be coming and speaking on that. What I do want to make sure is that there's a couple of things that I think are really important for parents to do. That last IEP, that really big last IEP, make sure you're keeping it in a safe place. I a lot of times ask the teachers to email it to the parents, and maybe you can, put it up in the cloud somewhere, because if you're looking for that IEP some years down the road and you don't have it, the school only has to keep it for a certain amount of time. The other thing that I think is really important is as soon as they qualify for Social Security, get them on Social Security. It's that Medicaid waiver part that pays for that plan. You don't want to wait till you get picked from the PUNS list and then try to set everything up.
Right. Thank you. Yes, good points. And we had a call from somebody looking for an IEP. They called our office, and as Sue said, we only keep IEPs for a certain amount of time. And so we do not have that. So yeah, that's very important. And then I just went ahead and put on the information, the contact information, but you'll probably hear this again through Prairie Lakes. So it was I have some handouts though that I want to show you. Let's see, that I have as well.
And if you email me those, I can email them out to everybody.
Okay,
too.
that would be great. Well, what is happening here? Yes, I see. I have a question about transitioning after high school. Okay.
Yes, is it okay if I ask the question?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I have a situation. I have two daughters, one that's 21 and is on benefits and is still in a transition program. I have a younger daughter that is severely, profoundly intellectual disability with a rare chromosome disorder, kind of similar like your son with an Angelman's. It's called epilepsy. She can walk and she can say about 100 words. So she's a senior. Just turned 18, I'm applying for benefits, but in transitioning from high school, everybody seems to go to what's called the transition program. And it's more of a program because my older daughter started there and she couldn't handle it with her anxiety. It's more for kids who can really possibly go to work afterwards and who can't really go to college, but they're going to train and get to work. Where my daughter she cannot live independently. She will always need a caregiver. And I'm having another IEP with them on Friday because I seemed like this transition program was just not for her. They weren't going to have gym anymore and she needs physical activity. The change might be too hard. It didn't seem like she was just going to get any of the things that she gets at Lamont High. And then I found out that technically or legally, she can actually stay at the high school for the next 4 years, because there's really no reason for her to transition, because
Right.
really at 22, 23, she's going to go into a day program.
Uh-huh.
Right. So is that correct? Am I correct in that? And because I'm going there on Friday, I really do want her to stay at high school and get all the current services she's getting. And because she's met all of her requirements to graduate, I wanted to ask if she could do gym every day because she needs that physical activity. Do you see people doing that? Is that something like, what are other options for kids like my daughter?
Sure. Yes, students can stay into their 22nd birthday. So it would be, if a student turned 22 in October, they can still finish out that school year. Parents have been choosing, because adult services are limited or full funding, all of that kind of stuff, choosing to stay in school. My schools, again, I go back to those transition assessments. What are those strengths and needs? And if the physical education piece of that is a need, then they should develop that program for her. And that kind of gets a little tricky. And I don't know how big your high school is. I have worked with more of the smaller schools, and I've had, right, the program doesn't fit our kids. We have to fit this. No,
Right.
the student doesn't fit the program. The program has to fit our
Right.
kids, right?
Right.
So to me, that can look like anything. If it's a half day, if it's, could she do the physical education and could they have her work in a day shelter for a part of the time? I mean, it's asking all of those questions and being creative and thinking outside the box.
But I mean, I guess my question, so she's been at Lamont High School, since a freshman, and they actually did set up a whole special ed program because there's about 8 kids like her. So
Nice.
the high
Okay.
school is absolutely phenomenal what they do for her.
Great.
I don't want her to transition now from Lamont High School into the transition program in Orland, where a lot of the kids go, and then that's where they get more job training.
Okay.
To me, she doesn't need that. She's not going to transition into a job. She's going to, at 23, then do some type of day program.
Yeah.
And live with me until maybe 30s, then I'll start looking into a SILA.
Okay.
But I guess my question was, do you see a lot of people who have kids like my daughter who are nonverbal, who can choose to stay at their high school
Yes.
for 4 years versus going to the different options of these transition programs that the school offers for kids who are, even though the transition program says, oh, well, we'll have our own class and she'll be, but now she's not getting exercise every day. They don't have a gym class because, oh, well, when you're, 18, 19, you kind of transition into this. And I'm like, but that's not my daughter.
Yeah.
So
yes, I have.
Okay,
Yes.
so, and the schools
have
have
seen-
fight me with that, right? Like the school, because it's like legally they have to still, if you want your daughter or son to stay there, they have to, correct?
Yes, they may, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna, how happy they might be.
Yeah.
But I have had parents fight for their student to stay in their current high school.
Okay.
And, and then it's just, okay, let's work together. And what's this going to look like for the student and how we can still provide for the student and continue to meet their needs.
Okay.
And it could be a wake up to the school to say, you know what, we might need to have some kind of program because parents are going to want their kids to stay in their high school.
Right. I mean, for her, she doesn't need to go through a change for 4 years and then another change. It's not necessary for her. As stress, it does no good. And then she loses a lot of the benefits of what the high school is providing her.
Sure.
So I just wanted to kind of run that, make sure that's.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
We've had it. Yes.
All
Can you
right.
argue the point that by transitioning her, it's going to too restrictive
Okay.
of an environment
Yes.
instead of the least restrictive?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a word game.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I am not sure. My screen is just dark when I minimize the speakers. So I can try and get to these handouts. So I don't know what is happening. Oh, here. Gotta love technology.
I would love to tell you I can help you, but I'm probably worse at it than you.
Okay. I think I'm gonna have to. All right, so here's just something, the references that I am using at a professional development I had. This is through, let's see, the Clancy Associations. So they just provided handouts, and I just thought this was interesting, just the parents' timeline. And it what I like about it, and I don't know if you remember me saying, I think, transition and preparing our kids should start as young as we can get it to start. So, here it starts birth age 12 and goes up to age 17, 24. So it just kind of walks you through like just the different things you should be doing for your student, the legal part of it, the financial part of it. So I thought this was kind of a nice handout that I like to give to parents. And then this is the puns. We are required now to give information about puns at our IEP meetings with our procedural safeguards. So I'm sure you guys probably already know this. It just talks about who to contact, frequently asked question, who can enroll, how does the selection happen? And then at the bottom here, just if families are in crisis, that students could move immediately to the top so they can provide services. What information? So this is all, if you're still having IEP meetings, you'll be getting a copy of this, but I'd be more than happy to share that as well. And then I've got, sorry, it keeps on sharing. And then this is just the different government programs for those with disabilities. So it just kind of walks through all of those different programs. And then the final thing just a lot of different, as I said, resources that you can find. Just a lot of the some additional transition resources on our website, basa.org. We have a whole section on transition. The ones that are underlined are because they address more than just one of those: employment, transition, education, independent living. They address more of the components. So, or I'm sorry, they're recommended. There's 15 of the assessments that they fit 2 of the domains. So there's a lot out there. I think that's such an important step to do a good assessment, because we want to use the data. We want to make sure that the information we're getting is purposeful and useful to our students. Okay.
What was that website called again that we can find the information?
For which information?
The resources. that you just showed, the screenshot you said you could find it on, is it bassa.org?
Yeah, bassa.org.
Is that BASSA?
BHASED.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. I can actually, let me pull it up for you too.
And Cindy's gonna send me all of these and then I can email them out to everybody if that would help.
So here's our website. And if you scroll down to special education, here's our transition plan resources. And then we've got just some assessments, inventories, so examples of services and goals. The indicator 13 rubric is not necessarily part of the IEP, but as school districts, we have to complete that for the state. And we have to make sure that every box that we check is a yes. Because if it's not, then we don't meet indicator 13. And the state does look at this. So some of the questions are, were those transition assessments completed in the annual, within that IEP timeframe? Are there goals related to the assessments and transition? Let's see, was the student invited to the IEP? What outside agency invited? Was there a consent to invite an outside agency? Because we can't send an invite to an IEP meeting unless you have signed a release for us to invite somebody because of the confidentiality. And I think sometimes, and I know this, not sometimes, I know a lot of my teachers forget that piece of it. I'm like, don't forget, you gotta get that consent signed. Make sure you have that. And then it talks about your post-secondary. So this is something that, this is what, when the state comes in and if they review that transition plan, they review it using this. And I'm biased. I like our website. I think we got some good information.
What are your thoughts on guardianship? I was going to hold off because I've spoken to a couple special needs attorneys who say, you know, you really could hold off until it's a SILA type situation, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I agree with Sue. I have a student that got COVID and had to go to the hospital.
Okay.
And his mom didn't have guardianship, medical, financial, anything. And she was panicking like you would not believe. I suggest anything could happen. Get guardianship.
Okay.
And there's different levels of guardianship. And so, that would be your decision for that. But
okay.
I have guardianship of my son. And I was one of those crazy parents that, at age 9, I'm already thinking like, when do I have to get him signed up for this? Just calm down. I'm like, well, what's going to happen? Like, where's he going to go? And so he lives up in a group home in Rockford.
Oh, okay.
So Sue, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No. My son is 31 and I still don't have it, but it was also more of a financial situation where I just couldn't afford to get it. Luckily, he's very verbal and he's always the first one to say, no, my mom, she handles that.
Yeah.
Which makes it really a lot easier on my end than if you have a child that maybe doesn't have the ability to verbalize that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm divorced and it's a sticky situation and that seems to be the issue amongst other things. And my older daughter, I have power of attorney, but with her I can because she's more anxiety and she's way higher functioning. But Rachel, she can't even sign her name. So how can she give you power of attorney,
Right. It's so unfortunate that it's so expensive.
Well, yeah.
Because we've got families that trying to link them up to different resources, and this one mom, she's like, I just don't have the money.
Yeah.
So it's very sad.
I agree. Does anybody else have any questions? We do have 2 more parent learning series coming up on May 18th. It's puns. What is puns and what are my options? And on May 25th, it's job training and community employment services. If anybody is interested in any of those and they haven't signed up, just go ahead and contact me and I will get you registered. If there's something that you're interested in, something that you need to know, a topic that we aren't covering, please reach out to me. I'm always looking for, you know, other workshops. In the fall, we'll probably go back to more of that financial side of things, guardianship, able account, special needs trust. But if there's something that we're not providing and you're interested in it, please let me know and I will try to get the help.
Okay, excellent.
When was May 18th, and when was the other one, Sue?
May 25th.
May 25th. Okay. Thank you.
Sue,
And again, I'd like to, excuse me?
could you put me down for the 25th? I didn't see that one earlier when I contacted you.
Oh, yeah, I would love to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And yeah,
And again,
thank
I
you
want to
for-
thank Cindy. You have given us a lot of information and we appreciate it. Renee, did you want to?
Oh, I
say
just want to
something?
say, if you could put me down for the May 25th as well.
I
would be
will.
Thank you.
I will. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, if you
Thank
have
you.
any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. I'm recording this, so it will be on our website if you heard the information, but there's so much going on that you didn't remember everything said. You can go back and look at it again. Or when she sends me the worksheets or the information that she shared with us, I will send it out to everybody else. Thank you, everybody. Have
Thanks,
a good
Sue.
evening.
Thanks, Cindy.
I appreciate
Bye.
all of you. Bye.
Bye.